Suid-Afrika is 'n grondwetlike demokrasie. Die Grondwet en konstitusionele hof is twee van die belangrikste pilare waarop die bestel steun. Die hoogste hof van die land het die afgelope dekade verskeie uitsprake gelewer wat uit sommige oorde geprys en uit ander gekritiseer is. So vanaand bespreek ons die veerkragtigheid van ons grondwet. En wie beter om dit te doen as die afgetrede hoofregter van Suid-Afrika, Mogoeng Mogoeng, wat saam met my in die ateljee is. Welcome, Justice. This weekend we celebrated 30 years of democracy. Had it not been for an independent judiciary, where do you think our country would be today?
Well, in the absence of a truly independent judiciary, you can only have a dictatorship. And when you have a dictatorship, anything goes that the power-hungry would want to do.
We often hear this narrative, this sentiment expressed in a country like ours, with so many people living in abject poverty, that the Constitution means nothing to them. They can't eat it, it's not tangible. What do you say to people like that?
I think the fundamental understanding that we all need to embrace is no constitution, however excellent, and no law, however all-encompassing, is capable of implementing itself. It takes ethical and good leadership, visionary leadership, that is truly committed to the advancement of the interests of all, to actualize provisions of the Constitution and the law so that they redound to the benefit of us all. If you have poor leadership, it doesn't matter how good the institutions you have are. It doesn't matter how sound your constitution and laws are. It doesn't matter what policies you are. They will remain on paper, but would not be as worth the paper on which they are written. It takes men and women of character, visionary leaders, to implement that which is supposed to be for the good of us all.
Do you think we've had a lack of good, credible and moral leadership in the past few years?
Well, I leave it to the public to judge. The point is, if you have ethical leadership that is truly committed to the best interest of the people, the advancement of the best interest of the people, that leadership would seize the opportunity to put into practice everything that we have available so that those that cause people grief, things that cause people to be as concerned as they have been for a while now, come to an end. But I'm digressing. You know, I was going through some messages yesterday to reduce, to create more space in my phone, and I came across the message that I was strongly inspired by the Lord to release on the occasion of administering the oath of office to the Deputy President and new ministers and deputy ministers. And that was about the essentiality of the oath of office, that this is not a game. When you take an oath of office, you are covenanting with the people. You are openly undertaking to the public that you are going to do whatever it is that your office demands of you to do. Now, a reflection of your commitment to the oath of office or affirmation of office will be seen in how you implement that which you are supposed to implement in line with the responsibilities that are placed on you.
But Justice, are you concerned about the many instances that the courts have been approached to remind our leaders, those that have taken the oath, what it means and what it stands for?
Well, it is a concern. For one reason, it bloats the court roll. Matters that could have been expeditiously disposed of lag behind because quite frequently those that come from political parties are urgent in character, and they therefore tend to occupy, enjoy priority as compared to the rest of the matters. I think we've got to reach that level of maturity as leaders across the board to inculcate the culture of settling down and looking at how best to thresh out our differences before we rush to the courts to have them resolve them for us.
But what about attacks on the court? Not just the highest court, but the various other courts as well. And we've seen this from various politicians the past few years.
Absolutely. It affects all courts. Why is it that it comes from one angle? If other interest groups, if other entities, if other sectors in society or in the nation seem to have it within their capacity to address their differences or at least try to resolve them before they can be taken to court, I think so can political actors.
You talk about leadership. On the 10th of May, the Constitutional Court will hear the IEC's case against the Electoral Court's judgment that former President Jacob Zuma can be an MP if his party gets enough votes. The previous time the former president was sentenced, or the court did not find in his favour, riots broke out across the country in 2021. Do you think that the same will happen this time if the court does not find in former President Zuma's favour?
I don't know if it will happen, and even if I had a view, I think it would be most inappropriate for me to express that view.
But what do you make of that kind of sentiment, that we have this large section in society that oftentimes they don't respect judgments by the Constitutional Court?
Well, I think let's pause and reflect. Why is that so? What is it that we as a nation have been saying about our judges or our courts? In circumstances where judgments that have been delivered are not in line with our preferences, I think we all have to reflect. We all have to pause and reflect on our attitude. And whenever judgments are delivered that we don't like, the mockery of certain judges, the drawing up of cartoons, and slandering them as if to send a message across that you better toe a line or else this will be your portion as well. I think we all need to come down and reflect on our contribution towards attempts at delegitimizing the courts. There's been quite a lot of that from different sectors, particularly from the political sectors. But I think a lot of progress was made. I think it was in August 2015, 2016, I stand to be corrected, when politicians seemed to think that they were at large to just speak anyhow about the courts and the judges. Those of you who were observant would recall that I convened a media briefing. I addressed the media, raising our concerns. I called for a meeting with members of the executive and, of course, ultimately the leadership of the judiciary and the leadership of the executive led by then President Zuma came together, and we agreed on protocols to be observed by either side before any particularly senior leader would go out to criticize the judges. Subsequently, the leadership of the three arms of the state met: the Speaker of Parliament, the Chair of the National Council of Provinces, the President and the Chief Justice. And we reflected on these issues and how damaging, just criticizing one arm without having afforded them the opportunity to explain themselves, not in a compromising way, how dangerous that could be to the stability of our constitutional democracy. And ever since, as far as I can recall, we haven't seen much of that kind of attitude of people thinking that they can get away with criticizing the judiciary as they wish, taking advantage of the restraint that the judiciary ordinarily exercises.
I want to just get back to the Constitution, Justice. Last week, various Afrikaanse organizations spoke about a cultural consensus that they want to reach with government. Do you think that the Constitution provides enough protection to minority groups in South Africa?
I believe that the Constitution provides sufficient protection to all people in South Africa. It is always going to depend on the leadership across the board. Remember, the Constitution is a product of negotiations. It's not an imposition. And it's structured in such a way as to attract criticism from different groupings depending on how they feel that their interests are not properly accommodated. But broadly speaking, we have everything we need to be able to protect whoever needs protection, inclusive of the minorities.
You are a farmer, you farm in Northwest, you interact with the farming community.
Yes.
This issue of the land issue,
Yes.
still very contentious. Where do you see this issue going in future? How do we solve it?
You know, I had occasion to address a meeting of farmers. I think it was the provincial structure of Agri-SA, Agri-Northwest, some time last year, and I don't think they understood me. One, there is a practical perspective, and there is also what God has released as a solution to the land issue. The practical perspective is this. Very much like in any other family, you're always going to have those family members whose blood is boiling. They want to fight over virtually everything that is a point of difference among them. But you will inevitably come across those that are level-headed, those that are cool-headed, those who never lose confidence in their collective capacity to sit down and resolve whatever family dispute exists among them. I see our nation as a family, one big family that ought not to pay much attention to the color of their skin, but to focus more on the common interest that confronts them, whether it is land or whatever else, and say, but this is a problem. The worst thing we can ever do is to deny that the land issue is a problem. It is a divisive issue, and it doesn't call for emotions. It calls for cool heads. Let's settle down and reflect on how best to resolve this apparently intractable problem that confronts us. I mean, think about it. How did it come about that, unlike pre-1994, you don't have many people killed by the state or killed by one organization or the other? We haven't had that ever since 1994. Why? Because somehow we developed some confidence in our collective capacity to resolve our problems, however incapable of resolution they appear to be. And we've been around for some 30 years. There are differences still, there are problems still, serious problems, but we haven't been chopping each other's heads as used to be in the past. That is a clear pointer to me, and that reinforces my confidence in even more for the capacity of all people in this country, all well-meaning people in this country, to come together and say, you know what, this land thing is going to be a problem for many years to come if we keep on pushing it back. We don't have to be exchanging views in the public. Let's get into the room. Let us just determine that everybody who has an interest in this matter, people that we have confidence in their ability to listen to others, not just to be overly obsessed with our own sense of self-righteousness. Let us come together. For as long as this issue is not resolved, we're not going to stop meeting. And I proposed something some years back at the university, at Free State University. I said, big business has a critical role to play here. I'm telling you, with in-depth discussion, we've got sufficiently wealthy people to appreciate that in an incremental way, they can join hands and determine to purchase land either for communities or individuals with interest in farming, not for the purpose of capturing them so that they can be their puppets, but as a way of empowering these people who are previously empowered, and not just give them land and dump them in the land because they are going to fail, but have capacity building measures that will ensure that whoever occupies land makes a success out of it. And this can extend even to land that has already been restituted. But it can all become a workable solution if there is a concerted effort to confront this issue, to find how best do we resolve this issue, because we've been accusing and counter-accusing one another for the past 30 years. It hasn't brought us anywhere. We haven't resolved the issues. The same way that we were able to all vote in 1994 as a consequence of coming together and confronting the issues, I believe that any problem, whether it is violence, whether it is ESCOM, whether it is potholes, whatever it is, we have it within our capacity as leaders and as a nation to resolve that issue.
Justice Mogoeng, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bly ingeskakel